order, Historic Landmarks Commission, August 30th, 2023. All right, first up, let's do roll call.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. I'll take roll call. Chair Grumbine.
Present.
Vice Chair House is absent right now. Commissioner Butler.
Here.
Commissioner Dorden.
Here.
Commissioner Drury.
Here.
Commissioner Ensberg.
Here.
Commissioner Lundvik.
Here.
Commissioner McClure.
Here.
And Commissioner Uli is absent. Thank you. We have quorum.
All right, thank you. On to item B, approval of the minutes of Historic Landmarks Commission, meeting of August 16th, 2000, oh, sorry, public comment. Oh, yeah, I was looking up there at B, but, all right, item A, public comment. Any member of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within our jurisdiction that is not scheduled on this agenda for public discussion. So, is there anyone in the room that would like to bring up something that's not on the agenda? All right, seeing none, if we can go to virtual.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. Turning to virtual, if there's anyone participating on Zoom who would like to
On June, July, or August.
to speak on an item not on today's agenda, please raise your hand. Not seeing any raised hands. Let me check. And to the speaker that just, is that the consent item? Okay. So this gentleman. And then to the speaker that just turned in the speaker slip, this should actually be under general business, so I can ask you to come to the podium and you can speak now on the item.
All right, thank you.
And that's Mr. Peter Presswick.
Good afternoon. I'm Peter Preiswerk. I'm the chair of the Finance and Facilities Commission of the First Congregational Church. And I understand you had a consensus item on the agenda for a window replacement facing Padre Street of our church building at 2101 State Street and Padre. From what I understood was that you disapproved the proposal because the proposal considered sliding windows, although they appear the same as the old ones, which are casement. And I understand you would approve the casement, but not the sliding. This would mean that we would incur a considerable increase in the cost of the whole project, about a third, according to the window manufacturer. As a non-profit, we don't have money to throw away, and so I would ask you to reconsider that, or at least not make it final, or let us decide once we have a better understanding of the cost, because as an organization, we can't make that decision just by one person. That's usually a committee, and you know how committees work. So I was just trying to make sure that you understand that we cannot, at this time, say yes to your decision, but we would like to reserve our options to appeal it.
And just as a point of clarification along that, sorry, which item was this for? Is this a consent?
It was
Yes.
consent, yes.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
can
it's
speak
a
to it a little
consent.
bit.
Okay, and maybe we can do that under C. So during our consent calendar discussion, we can have that discussion. We may ask you to come back up for that, but thank you for
Okay.
letting us know.
What time?
So it'll be in a few minutes.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
good, good.
as long as everyone doesn't take too long.
Good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it'll be item C, so we're on A right now. Okay, great. All right, any other public comment?
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. I don't have any raised hands, any more speaker slips. We did receive written correspondence from Kevin Boss, Ann Grant, and Anne Maureen Castleberg, which was distributed to the commission prior to the meeting. Back to you.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll close public comment and on to item B, approval of the minutes of Historic Landmarks Commission meeting of August 16th, 2023.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Drury, second by Vice Chair House. Under discussion, are there any edits or changes to the Meeting minutes. Going once.
I have one suggestion and one comment. Under, let's see, this is the West Carrillo, East Carrillo. The Carrillo project that we reviewed was item,
Ambassador Park.
no, this is 123 East Carrillo, number 4. I just was wondering, you know, in our constant efforts to try to be really, really clear to applicants upfront, first time in, exactly what we're trying, how we're responding to their proposal, I was wondering if it might be helpful to put item number 13 up higher on the list, which is where we're emphasizing that we are in the El Pueblo Viejo and that the building needed to be more Spanish colonial revival in style. I just thought it might be better to raise it up a little higher.
Yeah, as sort of a more general comment as opposed to the particulars that we got into. In terms of process, is that's legit to be able to shift around position of?
Yeah, as long as
Comments?
the comment was officially stated in the motion, if you want to move it up to a different number to increase like awareness of it, that's perfect.
Yeah, and I think it just makes more appropriate sense as a going from broad to particulars. So, yeah, I think that makes sense.
Make it number 2.
Yeah,
maybe
or
number
number 3 maybe, because
Yes.
when general support of the mass, bulk, and scale, and then we're starting to get into the comments, or into the more particulars. Okay, actually, let's make it number 4, because then the 3 is also about the size and the constraints of the site.
Yeah.
So then, before we get into all the details, we can go into that. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Any other edits?
Thank you. And then the other one was the 100 West Cabrillo, which was the Shumash project. These aren't numbered, but the one halfway down where it says, discuss the use of technology and the exhibits with the Chumash representatives. I'm just wondering, first of all, how much we, as a board for aesthetics, how much we should really be talking about that sort of thing. Just wanted to ask about that. And then number 2, just to make it clear, because there was a little bit of a discussion about it. Some felt that that was something they wanted to bring up. And then I remember I brought up the issue of, you know, perhaps they have another idea about what they're trying to emphasize in this natural area, and maybe the elimination or not inclusion of technology might be possibly appropriate, but that it should be up to them to make that decision. So I just thought this wording was, could be more clear.
Yeah, so, and how could it be more clear?
You can eliminate it.
No, it was part of the motion. We can't just take it out.
Maybe,
Because I think what you're saying is discuss the use of technology or not using technology.
yes,
And I think that was
as
what we're-
determined, as
yeah.
determined by,
And- Yeah. And I think I think by giving them, so, well, first to your point on aesthetics, I do think that technology, depending on what the technology is that's being used, it will have aesthetic implications or not. But also it might be in the very art realm and not be any of, that might be very much out of our purview in terms of First Amendment right. So it seems like sometimes it will be and sometimes it won't be, but the general direction of working with the Chumash representatives to consider the use of technology or not within the, I think that was what we were saying.
Yeah.
Because of what you had brought up, which was, or you don't necessarily need to use technology. And Commissioner Jordan was bringing up, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you were also bringing up consider the using of technology. So it seems like those are both, were on the table as us wanting them to think about it.
Perhaps the insertion of the word appropriate, discuss appropriate exhibition technology with the Chumash.
Okay, yeah, I think that makes sense.
could we
'Cause
say
then
possible?
possible,
possible,
appropriate? Yeah, possible,
um,
appropriate. I think that leaves it
And
Is
then,
more adjectives.
as ultimately determined by the Chumash representatives.
Yeah, I think our direction is pretty clear on that, because we say to discuss it with them, so it's obviously and I think it's very clear from this project that they've been working very closely with them, and there's been strong connection and engagement, and not just engagement, but being led by. So it doesn't, yeah, that seems to still be at the heart of what we were saying.
On the larger issue, exhibition technology does have spatial implications which are appropriate for us to discover. Number and size and position of signage, for example, or the need for electrical cabinets to support digital. All of those have spatial design implications. So it is appropriate to have this comment and to show that we're open, to.
Yeah, and because there can be, I agree, and there can be a range from just, electrical and whatever connecting outlets for presentations or for things, everything from support technology to actual, exhibit stuff that is technological, that has technological components. So I think with that, I think we're,
Yeah, I think if adding the word possible,
yeah,
then I think that
possible and
makes it-
appropriate.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's
And-
all.
And stupendous. All right, no stupendous.
And historic.
And historic but new.
Anyway, yes,
All right,
thank you.
so any other edits or changes? Okay. All right, does the maker and the second of the motion agree with those edits?
Yeah.
All right, so with that, let's have a roll call vote.
Thank you. I'll take roll call vote. Commissioner Dordan,
Yes,
Commissioner Drury,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes,
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lundvik,
Yes.
Commissioner McClure,
Yes.
Vice Chair House,
Yes.
and Chair Grumby.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right. And now we're on to item C. This is the approval of the consent calendar. So it'll be appropriate this time if we have a discussion, especially considering the earlier public comment as well.
Shall I fill you in?
Sure, please.
So what was the address again?
And does staff want to go over what the
Absolutely. I'll,
current
I
conclusions
can
are?
just summarize what the issue was and.
Yeah, so the address was 2101 State Street, and it received project design approval and final approval with the condition that all the windows be casement. The applicant would like to request that the project be reviewed by the full commission. So instead of, earlier I thought the applicant would need to appeal the project to the full commission, but the procedure would be if you all hear from Commissioners House and McClure and determine that you agree with their motion and you decide to ratify the consent minutes as submitted, they would need to appeal the project to City Council to change the decision. If you decide you all want to review the project yourselves, you can just amend the motion to continue it to the full commission. So I'll let Commissioner or Vice Chair House take it
And
from
then
here.
just one more point of clarification. And if
Absolutely.
that's the motion, do we review it? We don't review it at this meeting. It has to be agendized, right?
Yes.
At like the next meeting or whatever.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Okay, thanks. Yeah, so.
Okay.
Vice Chair
the
House.
application was to renovate windows in the historically significant portion of the property, and then there was another part that was not historically significant, and the request was to replace the existing old steel windows with fiberglass windows that for the most part look very close and would be painted. However, I discovered they were proposing horizontal sliding windows and not casements like the original steel windows. And I felt that, I would agree with them that when the windows are closed, you can't really tell the difference, but when they're open, it's very obvious they're sliding windows and not casement windows. And I think considering the finding that has to be made that it's consistent with adjacent historic structures and stuff, I found it inappropriate to use sliders.
Okay,
So I made a motion to approve it with the condition that they be casements, and that if they wanted to pursue it, they could appeal it to this full commission.
got it. And then Commissioner McClure, did you want anything to
I
add?
just conferred, I mean, Steve's the building architect, and so I just supported him.
Great.
No comment.
Okay, so then, in terms of under discussion then for this, on this, so was this, just as a point of clarification, these were windows on a non-historic building that was right next to, or as part of the addition, or what is it?
Yeah, the main church is the historically significant where the sanctuary is, and then they have like an education building adjacent full of classrooms and rooms they rent out to the community for different uses. It's a
Gotcha.
later building, it doesn't have the architectural merit that the actual sanctuary does.
And it's not on the inventory
No,
either.
no,
Gotcha.
it's
And-
just on the same lot, so anything on the same lot comes to you all.
Got it. And then were the new windows going to be the same divisions of like, or the
I
rented
believe so.
divisions?
I didn't get into the nitty-gritty of that, but they were divided light. And it was represented that they were the same configuration.
Gotcha. All right, other questions
Yeah,
or discussion, I guess?
Yes, Chair
Yeah.
Grumbine. So just to be clear, so this is, in this building, they were the original, were they steel windows originally that were casements?
Yes, they are I think you can all imagine, like the early 1940s steel, when they used that a lot. Yeah.
Let me
I don't
also
know.
add
Call
that
it
the
pictures.
applicant represented that the old steel windows were difficult to crank, and so they had a concern that replacing it with casements, they were going to have the same problem. I assured them, no, modern casements have stainless steel hinges, and they're not going to be a problem. So,
Okay. And then how many, and then this might be a question for either of you that know, how many windows are we talking about here?
12.
12, like decent sized?
Do you have the
I
Yeah,
recognize the size, and I think it was represented that some of the replacements would be casements, and others would be horizontal sliding, and there were some fixed, so
There they
I don't know
do
exactly
you
how
have the
many
pictures of the
sliders.
existing?
But
There,
That's,
there.
yeah.
Gotcha.
So when I walked the site with the applicant a few months ago, I made it really clear the wood needed to be restored because it could, and that the metal, which were less visible and less significant, they wanted the option to replace, just because they are very difficult to restore or find any steel windows to replace, as you know, unless, I mean, I've seen National Register projects, big warehouses go through it, but it's a big endeavor.
Yeah.
And also keep in mind that at this point, you're not reviewing the project itself.
Yeah.
You're determining whether or not you want to review it as a full commission or if you support the motion that was made.
Okay.
One other question, Chair Grumbine.
Hold
Is
on a
it?
second.
Oh,
Ellen, may I, Chair Gumbine?
Yes, please.
Ellen Coquin, I'm the design review supervisor. So I just also want to put in context, this might be for the applicant, that an approval of project design approval that was granted today with conditions is valid for 3 years. And so within that 3-year timeframe, that's, you're trying to get an issued building permit. So another consideration is if there's additional questioning and committee work that you have to do behind the scenes, you could always come back for a review after final. I mean, ideally, we would try to avoid an appeal, but again, the city has due process in order to, be able to follow through when there are disagreements with decisions. So I think that could, if the commission decides not to review this project with the full commission and decides to uphold the decision today, I just want to also extend, there is the appeal, but then there's also the opportunity to come back for review after final. So just further consideration.
And as a question to that, is this for project design approval and final approval?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And there's a deadline for appealing to
Right.
HLC.
So anytime HLC or any design review board issues an approval, there's a project design approval or final approval. Again, this one is both project design approval and final approval. You have 10 calendar days to submit an appeal. Again, that's added process, but I do think that there's multiple avenues to explore potentially, again. So I just want to.
A question about that, is there any option that we have to accept the project design approval, but not the final approval? And have it come for final approval to the board? Because then project design approval would be the same design in windows, but then particular workings of them could then come for a further discussion with more information about the costs or the other potential solutions. Or is that not possible to break it apart like that?
I think we could break it apart. I think I'm concerned about how project design approval was granted because it was with the condition of the casement windows. So I feel like that's the part that's in question, at least for the applicant's reconsideration to the commission. So I'm going to look to you, Ms. Hernandez, if you have any other thoughts of how, if that's feasible, or that granting the approval of the windows. And I'm not 100% familiar with
Yeah.
this case, so it's a little bit hard for me to jump into the project.
I would also, appealing final approval, it kind of narrows the path for appeal because final approvals can only be appealed on the condition that the plans don't substantially match the plans that receive project design approval. So I think if you want to review the project as a full commission, I would advise just amending the motion to continue the project to the full commission rather than breaking up
Yeah.
the approval.
Gotcha.
Or maybe, we could do that, or continuing it with additional information to look into something. But because this application has been deemed complete, it is under permit streamlining. So we need to get a decision to the applicant within a 90-day, or, within a specific timeframe. I think I just confused everybody, but, there's just multiple options. And again, maybe with consideration to have the opportunity for you to speak with your committee as well. So depending on how it goes.
Okay, and actually, if you wouldn't mind coming up, sir, again. So it seems like, just to confirm what our options are, one is to accept the consent calendar decision, which is they have project design approval and final approval, and then as conditioned with it not being sliders but being casement. And then in that case, the applicant could come back for, you have an approved project, and you can come back for a review after final approval, because you've just been given final approval, with trying to convince us to, and we can come to bring this to the full board, but trying to convince us that whatever the facts that you find, like the cost or whatever the other reasons are, that you want to change to the slider option. That becomes an option for the HLC to decide at that point whether to give you a review after final and accept it. Now, as I understand it, my guess is the danger with that is you're fully approving something, and so that's kind of locked in as a decision, and then you're coming after for us to change it, so we're to change our decision based on new facts of cost or whatever it is. So that's one option. The other option would be us to just say, we'll just not accept the consent calendar rulings for now, and we want to pull this one up to the full board for a full review and discussion, in which case you can bring any other additional facts you want and have it come before the full board. So at least those are two clear options, is that right?
Right, and then I'll say the 2.5 or 3 is, you as the commission uphold the consent reviewers' decision, and you approve the minutes as is, and then there's this 10-day appeal period. Again, there's a cost to it, there's, added process, and that would, tends to be, it's an option, and,
It's called the nuclear option.
It's the nuclear option, yes, thank you for putting the words there. I hate to say that, but it truly is, but again, but I appreciate Ms. Rydell's point about the final approval appeal, that if you're going to appeal a decision, you really want to do it at project design approval, and so.
So it would be to
They could
appeal
appeal
it to
this
city
one.
council.
Right.
Appeal the decision to city council would be that nuclear or third option.
I mean, it would be, you could come here and have your presentation and then appeal this decision too.
That's
mean-
true, that's true.
as a-
So let's say the commission wishes to see it as, the full commission wishes to see the project. And then you make a decision that day, and that decision would also be appealed. So if today you decide to continue it and refer it to the full commission, then whenever this project comes back, you'll get a decision, and at that period, you'll have a 10 calendar day if you still don't agree with the decision.
So in that version, that's having an option 2 and then appealing it if you don't get what you're wanting out of it.
Right, yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chair, has there been a motion on this?
The motion was for the consent calendar,
Yeah.
but we're under discussion right now.
Okay, I would suggest that the motion be amended to remove the 2110 State Street from the consent and place it on the next regular agenda.
Okay, but before we get into motions, I want to at least hear from the applicant a little bit about what their thoughts and feelings are for it too, and then we can have our discussion and motion.
Can I had one other question, if I
Sure.
could. Just for clarification, because the applicant mentioned about the sliders and that, are we talking about a horizontal slider or a vertical, a double hung?
Horizontal.
A horizontal. And and maybe we can't answer this, I'm just going to ask, if a double hung was okay,
We shouldn't be getting into a discussion.
Yeah, I think,
Okay.
if I
On
may,
design,
Chair
yeah.
Grumbine, that would, should the commission wish, that it would be better to reschedule for a
Yeah,
discussion.
For actual solutions. Okay, so to the applicant, if you wouldn't mind. So given all those options, what thoughts would you as applicant prefer and why? Or what is your thinking hearing those sort of options laid out on the table?
I think that the first thing that we have to do is to get another estimate before we can make a decision whether we want to pursue an appeal if it's not approved, or whether we can absorb the additional cost. That's not going to take us very long. And then we might, if the cost is prohibitive, the increase is prohibitive, then we would probably come and ask for a full review and then take whatever decision comes out of that.
Okay, so right now, we've got to decide between one of two options for us. Is either we accept what was just happened at the consent calendar, which means that you're going to have a project design approval and final approval on the casement only, which you can still come back to us for review after final, but that's already been already been officially locked in, and we're going to have to change that if there's other additional facts or other reasons for consideration. So that's that one option. Or you could just say you would like us to have a review as a full commission, in which case everything pauses, and in 2 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever the calendar is, you would come back here and give that same presentation again with the additional information that you have. And by that point, you might find out that you priced it and it was okay and it wasn't much different and you guys were ready to go. That could just be your presentation that you're wanting to accept whatever, and we'll have to have it as a whole process. I just want to make sure that you understand what you're in for, both ways.
Yeah, okay. That what you would call that option 2, or?
Yeah, option 2, and it just means another Wednesday afternoon you get to hang out with us.
Well, I'm retired, some of you are retired, so. Yeah, I'd rather go on that, so we have everything together, because at this time, we really can't make much of a decision.
Sure. Okay, thank you very much,
But
Commissioner.
if you have any more technical questions, I'm glad to answer that too.
Okay, great.
I think option number 2 is a fair option. I think it's important to give him a little more expansive
Chance for that. Okay, and then Commissioner Lenvik, there's any other discussion before? I think Commissioner Lenvik wants to make a motion, and that was, you were wanting to make a motion for it to come back to us, right?
Yes.
Full board? Okay, so which is the option 2 that we're talking about.
Okay.
So you come back at the next agendized time and then give us the presentation. We get to ask all of our questions and all their possibilities, and you can tell us what
Okay.
you guys have thought since then.
Mr. Chair, if
Okay.
that's a motion, I'll second.
All right, Commissioner Lemick making a motion to continue this to the full board, and then your Commissioner Drury seconding it. Under discussion?
If I could,
Oh, wait, to staff?
yeah, if I could interject, well, I'll just briefly go over the motions for the other two items. And
Okay.
then, so the 701, item A, 701 Anacapa Street received project design approval and final approval as submitted. Item B, 21 East Sola Street received project design approval and final approval with the condition to admit the curly element on the lighting fixtures. And then item C, 2101 State Street, as you know, received project design approval and final approval with the condition that all the windows be casement. And the motion on the floor is to amend that motion to continue the project to full commission indefinitely.
And I think
And-
curly Q would be the better understood term
Curly
instead of curly.
There we go.
Loopity-loo.
We'll get that in the, so.
And then Commissioner Lenvick, as part of that motion, are you accepting the consent calendar items A and B
Yeah.
and the conclusions? Okay?
Yes.
And seconder, okay, great. All right, under discussion, any other discussion? All right, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Thank you. I'll take roll call vote. Commissioner Drury,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lundvik,
Yes.
Commissioner McClure,
Yes.
Commissioner Jordan,
Yes,
Vice Chair House,
Yes.
and Chair Grunbach.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, sir. All right, item D, announcements, requests by applicants for continuances and withdrawals, future agenda items, and appeals.
Staff has a couple of brief announcements. Item 2 on today's agenda, which is 1002 Anacapa Street. It's listed on the agenda as postponed to September 13th, but the applicant has requested that the item be postponed indefinitely. And then item 4 on the agenda, let me remind myself of the address number. 1925 State Street has been postponed to a date certain of September 13th. So that will be heard at the next hearing. And then Ms. Hernandez has a few announcements as well.
All right,
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. One item is we are working on a partnership with Santa Barbara Trust for Historic Preservation. They have a fund to give a stipend to an internship from an underrepresented community in historic preservation to inspire them in historic preservation. So I am working with an intern to complete our each of the sites that were discovered in the African American Historic Context Statement, doing the full reports for each one that we can send the owners, and hopefully they will want to become designated. They're on the inventory, but at least we'll have the full reports for each. And that's that program. And I also have an announcement that next Friday night, if you guys don't already know, on September 8th, Lauren Bricker, is gonna complete a lecture on David Gephardt, whose room you are sitting in. And she's gonna talk about all his accomplishments at that lecture. It's sponsored by Pearl Chase at the Alicama Theater, so you can register through Pearl Chase. It should be really interesting. His career was amazing as an architectural historian, and he also served for 2 decades on the HLC here, so it should be really interesting. Those are complete my announcements.
and he also was one of Commissioner Jordan's mentors at UCSB.
All right. Quite a few.
So,
small world.
He inspired quite a few people.
okay, great, thank you for that announcement. Other announcements?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner.
as you may recall, the Planning Commission had requested HLC presence at their last Planning Commission meeting regarding 710 State Street, a project that we had reviewed more than once. They had requested that we present our HLC findings in their consideration of that specific item. Commissioner Ensberg and myself attended. We did present at the beginning of the meeting how that under our review, we felt that the project both met our EPV guidelines specific to size, scale, location, design, et cetera, and we concluded with support for the project. We did remain for the duration of the long, tedious meeting. It was 3 hours, in case there were questions, thinking that perhaps we would be helpful, and there were none. So the actual item was put on indefinite continuation, I think, is what the Planning Commission found. Ms. Imberg, I don't know if you have something else to share with the...
I think that, you've explained it very well, and it was just a very long, drawn-out. The one thing that was really nice is that Commissioner Wiscombe did appreciate and thanked us for being there, so it was really nice to have that relationship, and I think, if we can continue that kind of working together that way, I think it's a really good thing.
Right.
So it was nice that she did make that comment.
And thank you for both for representing HLC there. And did they have coffee?
They
Okay,
didn't
good.
have,
At least
no cookies, no...
For that long meeting, just want to make sure everyone suffers together. Okay, well, thank you very much for both participating in that. In any other announcements?
Chair Grumby?
Yes.
I'm not going to be here
Commissioner
on
McClure?
the 7th of this month.
27th of September?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you for letting us know. Okay. All right, any other announcements, et cetera? All right, on to item E, subcommittee reports. Signs, State Street Advisory, Objective Design Standard, Plaza de la Guerra Design, or designations, or others.
I will report on the State Street Advisory Committee. The State Street Advisory Committee met about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, on August 21, a 4-hour meeting. And it was to review the updated plans from MIG, the city's consultant. And we were seeing revised plans from those that were originally presented to us on May 24th, which got such a poor reception. And the majority of the poor reception in May was regarding pedestrians, bikes, cars, whatever, in the corridor. This presentation that we had on August 21 did not deal with mobility, pedestrians, cars, bikes, so on and so forth. They simply left a 20 to 24 foot wide corridor down the middle of the street, and they intend to come back to us with a solution to the use of that corridor in probably a couple meetings. The emphasis on the plan they had put together was defining the corridor into, or separating it into 3 districts. The Arts District, which is Upper State Street from Sola to Carrillo, which is about 4 blocks. It is 4 blocks, the 1,000 block to the 1,300 block. The Core or Civic District, which is from Carrillo to Ortega, which is 3 blocks. And the Old Town District, which in essence goes from under the freeway to Ortega Street, 4 blocks, 300 block to the 600 block. The plan really did not identify what made those 3 districts unique. And everyone there, the 15 plus 2 alternates, with the exception of me, kind of felt that this is really a great plan. There was a lot of drooling and such over the plan, which
We're just trying to.
Which was not a result of looking at the plan, which is what we would do, I believe, but was rather looking at the words that they said, that they, how they wanted things to happen in those blocks. And sure, everybody wants to see activation and joy and kids and play and so on and so forth. But what in the plan facilitates that? And I don't think we saw that. And I should have spoken up about that at the time, but it's tough to be alone by yourself
When everyone's drooling.
when everyone else is drooling. The breakup into these three districts was no different than it was in the May Plan. The May Plan also broke it up into three districts. And in essence, if you simply compared the two plans, the May and the August one, there's not a lot of difference between them, not a lot of difference. And as one architect in the audience commented, maybe that's Orange County, or maybe that's Burbank, or whatever. And that's unfortunate, because we deserve better than that. I think what will really be the telling aspect of these designs is what they intend to do with regard to bikes, people, cars, shuttles, whatever. And the interesting thing about the current plan they'd put together was that they had people in the renderings, in the vignettes, whatever, on the sidewalks, on the sides, but there were no people in that 20 to 24 foot wide strip. I'm not sure what they're telling us. I mean, have they already made up their mind about what's going to happen there? I don't know. But it was, it's going to be interesting. The next meeting is on October 9th, or September 9th, maybe I forget what the exact date was. And we are going to be informed by the city about transportation history in Santa Barbara and related considerations. We're not going to see how MIG wants to integrate that history into the plan, but we're going to be told what the history of Santa Barbara's transportation is. Whatever.
They might roll out big-wheeled e-bikes.
Whatever, yeah.
A little wheel in the back.
Right. I think that mobility is going to be a big issue, and we saw City Council took some initial steps yesterday on mobility. And
So, quick question to the staff along those lines. Do we have dates for whatever the next meetings are? And
September 11th
September 11th?
is the meeting. Yeah, at the Faulkner, is the meeting with, we're going to hear transportation input. I think that one of our disappointments should be that there is so little recognition of Santa Barbara's historic architecture and planning and whatever in the schemes that we're seeing. They're ignoring us. And an example of that is, in the Arts District, a vignette rendering shows them removing the Museum of Art's wall and bench that's on the street, on State Street, removing it and replacing it with stepped seating, the full width, all the way back. Well, I mean,
I heard about that as well today, and that was designed by Luda Riggs. It's not going to be over.
Yeah, I mean,
It would be like an EIR. I just hope they know.
It's not going to happen, but it.
I
but
know. I was like, what? They said, what? Nobody asked me, for the record. Nobody,
It's not going
I've
to
not
happen,
been
but
consulted in
it's an
any of it.
indication of the lack of attention MIG is paying to Santa Barbara. In the words, you know, in these bullet points of words, oh, sure, architectural character, you know, or architectural history, but it's among a lot of other bullet points, and it really should take prominence, and it's not. Let me keep going here.
Yeah.
The plan appears to me to focus mainly on food and beverage restaurants. If you were to look at that plan and say, what is in any of these areas which say retail, I don't see anything that says retail. I see something that says a play area for kids, or I see a fountain, or I see.
Splash pad.
Yeah, a civic plaza. There are civic plazas which on the plan are merely a change of color for a square or rectangle at various areas. And in the civic area, 2 blocks of the civic area, there are, I believe, 4 plazas that have to be activated. People are going to stand up and speak, and jugglers are going to be there, so on and so forth. But what's going to happen when those are activated, whatever? Are they going to turn the bicycles off? I mean, you got a plaza in the middle of the street. Are you, that means the bikes got to stop. I don't know this has been thought out well. And not that there shouldn't be a plaza, but how do we accommodate the other activities that are important to the street? And I don't know that they've done that. It's like having the street be curbless, flat and curbless. I hope they thought about drainage. But even whatever, you've got Anapamu Crossing, you've got Coda Crossing, you've got all these streets that are crossing, which are down 6 or 8 inches below what would be the flat and whatever. So all this up and down and in and out is really, it has to be dealt with. And I don't know that some of these big questions are in the forefront. At least we haven't seen them at the State Street Advisory Committee. So I think that it is important that we keep on top of this. I don't know if anybody else has any comments. Some people were there for the full 4 hours, whatever. They may or may not have comments. But I think it would be good if the staff, our staff, maybe it's Tess Harris, could update us on occasion as a committee, as opposed to us relying on TV or going there and sitting in ourselves. But I think that a 15-minute update from Tess would be valuable to us all.
Well, Mr. Chair, I have a comment right off the bat.
We'll go Commissioner Drury, then we'll go Commissioner Butler.
My comment is that I really appreciate Commissioner Lenvick's input. Really, he's a watchdog, and I think we really need somebody like that. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Commissioner Butler?
So question, I believe I heard that the city has added this as a permanent agenda item on city council meetings going forward, and that would reiterate fellow commissioners' comments here. That sort of feels like the HLC sort of sitting on the outside while other decisions or reviews or the process is moving forward, and I have a concern about that.
So to follow up on that, yes and no. So the standing monthly city council, so myself and Commissioner Ensberg both were at the city council meeting regarding that, the creation of that. And instead of creating recreating the subcommittee that they had as a Brown Act committee, instead they agreed that it should just be coming back to city council as a full every month but this was specifically to do with the interim plan, not the master plan. So State Street is going to be coming back to city council regularly on all different front pieces of the interim plan. So things like, the parklets, lighting, bikes or no bikes on certain areas. They're going to test. The idea is going to be staff is going to come up with, and as part of that, working with HLC, the subcommittee that Commissioner Ensberg and myself are on, that we have we've met a couple times with staff for different things over the last year for this interim. That's now going to become ingrained in the process, so that we're going to be able to be reporting back to you all as the interim, and we're also going to be able to give input real time before city council actually sees the proposals from staff and to help guide some of those things. But that's only the interim plan. So, so anyways, just wanted to kind of clarify a good thing that we have, because we have been totally disconnected from the process for the last 3.5 years, and it's totally our purview. And it's very unfortunate that it has been that way. So, Commissioner Ensberg?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Lenvik, for being there and paying attention. My question is, I don't quite understand why at the beginning of each one of these meetings, it isn't clearly stated that the area in which this work is happening is El Pueblo Viejo. This is a district. It's the EPV. So I think that it's really important that that be stated up front. It's always bewildered me since the beginning of this, why, usually it's a good idea to kind of take a broad thing. We're in Santa Barbara, California, we're at, we're in the El Pueblo Viejo. So, this discussion of districts I find rather odd, since we are a district, and it certainly would be great to have a big gateway at either end of there that says El Pueblo Viejo. Now, if there want to be other districts, sub-districts, then that's can be discussed. I am interested in how do we, since this is so important, this is absolutely our area. This is why we're here. So how do we, and I'm grateful for this discussion right now, how do we have these discussions so that we can give feedback to Commissioner Lenvik that he can then take to the SSAC so that we're properly doing our job and inputting that to the, yes.
That's a great question. I had a similar one, and it was to ask the calendar of what is the calendar, because they've calendared out, like, at least in big brushstrokes, what their plan in terms of converging on a design and working it through and getting approval and all that. And at least various times, they've been before us once, and the plan was, as I understand it, to come before us again. So first question to staff, I don't know if you guys know the next time that they're supposed to be agendized or approximately for HLC. Has there been something on the calendar?
So, to the chair and the rest of the commission, nothing has been brought to my attention at this time, so nothing is currently on the schedule. As Nicole said, we haven't been involved in a lot of the discussions with State Street, the advisory committee, or any of the scheduling or the planning. So I don't have any more information for you right now. For the purpose of today and the general business item of reporting on the subcommittee, Commissioner Lenvik has reported on the meeting, and so we shouldn't get too much into a discussion of it. But I can ask Ellen for some updates and see if we can figure out a way to facilitate the HLC's input being brought to the State Street Advisory Committee, so you aren't left out of the process, or the HLC's purview isn't overlooked as this process moves along.
So along that lines, I think it would be appropriate for us, or it can just be individually, because it doesn't have to be motion or anything else, for myself, in seeing this, and I watched the video and I saw the designs and that, wanting a smooth process and seeing the danger of getting too far ahead of yourself before you come to the design review side of things, where it's going to be, Plaza de la Guerra was a struggle, and part of it is the way in which things were worked out and everyone agreed on things, and then it came to HLC and had a whole bunch of problems. And so not wanting that to happen and wanting the feedback early and well, and seeing some of the potential feedback and hearing some of it from Commissioner Lenvik already, I'm going to at least highly recommend that things get integrated very quickly with HLC, and I'm worried that there's going to be a problem if things go much further.
Absolutely, and I can discuss with Ellen
pass
if
it
we
on.
can possibly get Tess Harris in as an agenda item to give you some updates and facilitate a little discussion with the commission.
Okay, great, thank you. Commissioner Ensberg, and then Commissioner Lenvik.
Thank you, and would it be possible that, could this be, since the city is working on this, my understanding, what they said at the meeting was that they're trying to get through this first chunk of work with MIG by the end of the year, and to take it to council beginning of next year. So it's on a pretty fast track. I wonder if we can get this on our agenda to be a discussion item for every time we meet until then, so that it's just locked in.
So the problem with getting a discussion item for the State Street advisor, for the State Street master plan right now is that the State Street staff needs to be prepared to present something to you. And so I can't agendize an item when there is nothing to present. So I will, again, speak to Ellen and work with staff to see if we can get a discussion item agendized sometime soon. But at this time, we can't just have a standing discussion item for State Street.
So I think maybe an appropriate action then, rather than trying to make it a discussion item, I'm very clearly hearing all the concerns, and I have similar concerns. And maybe I should just write an email, write a letter expressing what I'm seeing as our concerns and making it, to everyone, make sure like come on, let's get all on that same page, and I don't want things to run away and then come to here and have problems. So I'll write that letter to staff and to city council that we're concerned about this. So, and then maybe we can get a good process in place.
And meanwhile, we're getting to be 45 minutes.
Yes.
Beyond schedule.
I believe they have tentatively scheduled meetings through the end of the year. And I couldn't quickly pull up that information. But they're tentative because they have to work around 17 people being available, plus staff, whatever. So there's always that give, and they have been very cooperative to not schedule any meetings on the Wednesday of a Landmark Commission hearing, which would be a conflict for me. So I really appreciate them working around at least my schedule so that I can be there. But if you have a meeting coming up, let's say it was September 11th or whatever, we don't get a package of information much before a week before that, maybe not even that. So it's not that I can bring something to you and say, here's what the package is, and besides that, the package can be. That we received was a draft document that I have the ability to print out on an 8.5 by 11, and I'm expected to make value judgments on a plan. It's at that scale with that kind of information on it. If that was brought before Landmarks, we would tell them they've got to come back with some better information. Now, obviously, there were big presentation boards at that meeting, but before that, I only have an 8.5 by 11 printer. I only can print out so much information, and when I've got that dealt with, then I may go in and blow up areas. There is the Museum of Art. You see the steps that they are taking out? So I can go in and blow up something. I'm still printing on 8.5 by 11. And again, we would probably not even give that concept approval with that kind of information that's there. But that, you go down the block and we've got Plaza Theater or other destination event and drop-off. Well, all that is a change of paving material.
Yeah, what makes it a plaza?
Yeah, it makes it a plaza. And again, I say, well, people are, if you got an event going on there and people are riding bikes down it, so on and so forth. So I don't have the ability to bring you more information than I get.
Yeah, I think it's not set up as a process for us to be able to give input in any way, shape, or form. It's really, and the way it's structured is structured so that there's one member of HLC that's at the group of 15 to give input on this. And anyways, I think so I think I'll write a letter to City Council and to staff and to ask that this be highly considered because it'll save a lot of time and money.
And Chair Grumbine?
Okay, yep.
At the very least, to announce at the beginning of the meeting, we're in El Pueblo Viejo.
Yeah.
Does everybody understand what that is? Does everybody know what El Pueblo Viejo is? Just that statement, I think, would be huge to help. So, even at that level, and maybe Commissioner Lenvik can make that statement, but, just really making it very clear that we're in a very special place, and it has a body that takes care of it and watches over it, and,
Tagging on that, I would ask Commissioner Lenvik as well to, and hearing these comments as well, and even though you're going to be the minority right now, if to really pass along strongly these.
Chair Davis on that, chair of the committee, is really good, and he is going to protect Santa Barbara and protect HLC, so on and so forth. So, I think if we simply remind Chair Davis that he has to remind all of us on the committee that we're in a historic district, and we've got to design and whatever to that district, then I think that'll be a big help. I don't know how this committee is going to function. Are they going to get to a point where they say, how many are in favor of this? Raise your hand. Well, I don't know.
Mr. Chair, if I
Yeah,
could
we
interject,
should
yes,
probably,
we
yeah,
need to be
wrap
conscious
up.
of time
Yeah.
and wrap this up.
So, yeah, I think we're good with
Yeah,
all that.
okay.
Thank you for reporting.
Thank you.
And anything else before we go on to item 1? All right, sorry for all those in the room that had to hear how the sausage is ripped apart, so.
I'm, with regard to items of other subcommittees, I think Plaza de la Guerra is as important in a lot of ways as State Street is. And I don't know who's on.
Was there any Plaza de la Guerra meetings in the last? Okay. All right, well, for the sake of
Right.
time, we'll.
Yeah, I think it'll be important for us to relook at the Phase 1 Historic Structures Report in anticipation of seeing what the Phase 2, which is being written now, will look like, or should look like. I don't know when we're going to see it again, but that Phase 2 is going to be, I think, a determining factor in how we look at Plaza de la Guerra.
Okay.
And one of the concepts.
Commissioner Lambic, we really have to move
We got a
on.
lot of continuances. One of the council members at
Last 10 seconds.
State Street Advisory Committee said that Plaza de la Guerra is different than a plaza on State Street. Plaza de la Guerra, this council person said, is our city hall's plaza, and it's got to be recognized as being ours and not something which is a plaza for the whole city and tourists and whatever. So,
Okay, I'm going to have to cut you off now because we've got to move on, and there wasn't anything for subcommittee to report, so we can't get into a discussion on an item that we're going to be seeing coming up without it just being a report. Okay, assuming there's no one else for other subcommittee reports, let's move on to item 1, discussion item, National Register Historic District for Bungalow Haven. This is the city's architectural historian will present information and an update on the neighborhood effort regarding a National Register Historic District proposal for Bungalow Haven.
And you have 2 minutes.
And you're already 45 minutes late. Thanks, Ass.
This is just a quick item. We discussed, I updated the designation subcommittee about this, and they requested that I present this to the full board, so you're aware of it as well. So this, I don't know if you've heard or read, but the state of California is adopting a state tax credit for historic projects. It's different from the Mills Act, where it's project-based rather than property tax-based. So if you're doing a $100,000 re-roof, you would get 20% tax credit for that project. Only buildings listed on the state register qualify. So our local districts and local designations don't qualify for that. And it should be enacted very soon. It's coming down the line. And so I was talking to some of the staff at the State Historic Preservation Office, and if you apply for a National Register district or property, you're automatically listed on the state register. And our ordinance protects anything on the state or national register, and all those properties come to the HLC. So for the Bungalow Haven, who's really looking towards designation, this one designation to the National Register would be a 3-for-1. They'd get National Register, clout, State Register to qualify for the tax credit, and our local protection. And the state, the National Register only requires 51% of the owners oppose the designation, which is much more feasible for them than finding 51% approve the designation owners and going through that at city council, or changing our ordinance, which doesn't look like it's feasible. So this looks like a really great path. The hearing will be taking place up in Sacramento and with the state commission. But I just wanted to show you where in our ordinance it does say exterior alterations are approved by the Landmarks Commission, as well as, here's the, according to the definition of a historic resource, which is a site, cultural landscape or feature designated, eligible designated historically significant based on our definition. And right there, it says listed on the state register or the national register. So you'll know that we will be protecting those, because if it was just listed on the national register, there's no protection. The protection comes here, but our ordinance protects them. And the benefits are really just getting access to that state tax credit, the 3-for-1 nomination, and the clout, I think, is really great for them being on the National Register. The California Office of Historic Preservation will take care of noticing all the property owners, and the majority has to oppose to stop the nomination, which it's really hard to get that many people to even vote for the President of the United States. So, that is why it seems like a really, really great path for them. And they will send us, as the local government, 60 days to comment on the application. And again, the hearing will be scheduled in Sacramento at the State Historic Resources Commission to make the final decision. And that I've talked to the Bungalow Haven about this, because one of the holdups that has been happening since we passed our ordinance is the 51% approval. They just find that way too daunting to get.
To get anyone to answer.
Yes, especially with the many absentee landlords and things like that. So that is an update on their process. I did have we have the whole nomination sort of in our format, so it just needs to be translated to the National Register format. And so luckily, I had a charming intern interested in going to grad school in historic preservation, and I said, if you want to get your feet wet in what it's like, you could do this application, cut and paste ours into their format, and then you become familiar with some of the paperwork and things you'll be doing as a preservationist. So we have a volunteer doing that. Yay.
Great.
So it should be moving forward hopefully in the next few months, and I'm meeting with the neighbors in September.
Nice, awesome. And just a quick question on that. A little while back, I think it was with the ordinance or with some realignment of our terminology, we aligned things to be more either state or state and federal in terms of our criteria of significance and things like that, which we had at one point had different criteria than the state, which meant that you had to argue it one way, then argue it the other way, and things didn't sync. But now that all syncs as well.
They're
so-
all synced, yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
great.
really just cutting and pasting our stuff into the National Register format.
Yeah,
So, which is,
Great.
the National Register format's more, in my opinion, it reads to professionals and not so much to the lay people and property owners, where our format is more to, like, I have to convince these property owners to love their buildings, and there you're just convincing the preservationists that you've got all the forms filled out correctly, it seems like.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Any questions about it? Oh, do we need to go to public comment on this? Okay, so let's go to public comment. Anyone in the room wishing to comment on this? This is your chance. All right, hearing none, if we can go to virtual.
Thank you, Chair Grumbrine. Turning to virtual, if there's anyone on Zoom who would like to speak on this item, please raise your hands and we can call on you.
They're all asleep.
Not seeing any raised hands, and then we did not receive written correspondence. Back to the commission.
All right, thank you. All right, so we had, do we have any questions or comments on this? And there's no action needed, right? All right, well, thank you very much, Ms. Hernandez, and that's wonderful news, and yeah, great. Another great thing about having a historic building now, soon to be. All right, on to item 3, concept, this is for,
Mr.
oh, sorry, item 2, let's go on to item 2. This is a continued item for project design approval. It's 1002 Anacapa Street. Project design approval was requested, but there has been postponed per the applicant's request indefinitely.
To September 13th.
To, and then to indefinitely. That was one of the announcements earlier.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, so indefinitely postponed. All right, so we will move on now to item 3, which is a new item for concept review, 17 through 21 Montecito Street. All right.
Wake up, everybody.
We're finally. Actually, break time. Croissant time. Okay, so this new item for concept review. It's located in El Pueblo Viejo District, Part 1, and the building at 21 West Montecito Street is listed on the Historic Resources Inventory. The Art Mulaney Harley-Davidson shop, constructed in 1925 in the vernacular commercial style with Spanish colonial revival influences. The report was required to evaluate existing properties due to a pending proposal to demolish the existing structures on 3 separate parcels. Proposals to construct a new 27,600 square foot, 3-story hotel consisting of 44 guest rooms, a first-floor lobby, a reception area, a lounge, grab-and-go, storage area, roof deck, and underground 44-space park or valet parking. This is, there are 2 parts to this. This is item A is requesting acceptance of a revised historic structure sites report prepared by Sarah Corder. The revised report concluded that the properties at 17 West Montecito Street and 21 West Montecito Street are not eligible for historic designation and are not considered historical resources. Report was last reviewed on July 12th, 2023. And then we're going to have Part B, no final appealable action will take place at this meeting. Project compatibility findings will be required for project design approval. So it's going to be the review of the project for design. All right, so why don't we do Project A, Part A, and in this case, it's concluding that it's not historic. So if we accept it, we can accept it, that part, and it's not actually reviewing Part B. So we can just have a review of that and a motion, and then depending on how that goes, we can go on to Part B for the design review. All right, so with that, if you can introduce yourselves for the record, and then do we have any staff comments?
If you agree with the conclusions of the report, include in your motion that it will be removed from the Historic Resources Inventory.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. And then, so then, sorry, one other thing was, do we have minutes from the previous project that we want to go over? And then we can go to the applicant for introduction and a summary of the report.
Reverential silence.
Mm-hmm. Before all minutes are read, we have a moment of silence. All right. All right, so the motion was to continue indefinitely with the following comments. The commission feels that the integrity of the structure and the way its historical context is expressed does not rise to the level of historic resource or structure eligible for the historic resources inventory, considering recent discoveries. 2, the commission recommends reevaluating the conclusions of the report about the eligibility of 21 West Montecito Street as historically significant. The motion was by Ensberg, second was by Drury 900, and the motion carried. So, to you, if you could introduce yourself for the record and give us your revised report summary.
Absolutely. Hi, Commissioners. Pleasure to be here in front of you again. Sarah Corder, architectural historian for this project. When I was here in July, we had a building that was falling down, which I'm sure you all remember, the one pole holding it up. And we all kind of came to the conclusion that the report needed to be revised to say that its time had passed and that we are moving forward with taking it off of the inventory as it is now. So the report's been revised to reflect that the time for the building has passed and its history, while interesting, is not something that needs to be preserved. So that's the findings that are in the report now.
All right. Great, if that concludes your summary, we can go to public comment on item 3A on the historian's report. Any member of the public in the room wishing to comment on this item? All right, not seeing any. We can go to virtual public comment.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. Turning to virtual, if there's anyone on Zoom who would like to speak on the historic structure site report part of this item, please go ahead and raise your hand and we can call on you. Not seeing any raised hands, and we did not receive written correspondence. Back to the commission.
All right. Okay, to the commission for any questions on the report? Questions? None, not seeing any. All right, any comments?
I'm going to make a motion to approve the report as submitted.
Second.
All right, motion by Vice Chair House, second by Commissioner Butler.
Pardon my interjection, Vice Chair House, do you want to include, as part of your motion, to remove the property from the historic resources inventory?
Sure, why not?
Absolutely.
Throw that one in there. To kick the bottom out of that poll.
What's she saying?
All right. All right, and then the second of the motion agrees to that as well.
Completely.
All right, under discussion, any other discussion? All right, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. I'll take roll call vote. Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lenvig,
Yes.
Commissioner McClure,
Yes.
Commissioner Dorden,
Yes.
Commissioner Drury,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yep.
Vice Chair House,
Yes.
and Chair Grumbine.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the
Commissioners.
report. Thank you. All right, on to item B. This is for the design review, concept review. No final appealable action will take place, and project compatibility findings will be required for project design approval. All right, so welcome. You can introduce yourself for the record, and you'll have 15 minutes to show us your design.
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Clay Arell, architect for AB Design Studio. And was it number 3 tab? Is that what I'm clicking on? All right. Staff, did you want to say anything? I saw you come in.
I can do.
yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Tony Bauman, I'm the planner assigned to this. And the staff has already completed a pre-application review team review of this proposed hotel. And now the applicant has submitted a formal planning application. It's an application for a coastal development permit to be reviewed by the Planning Commission and a development plan for development of new non-residential floor area to be reviewed by the Planning Commission and design review by the HLC. So we completed one round of application, formal application completeness review. One of the items is today's hearing for the project to come here for your initial concept review and comments on the project. One question we have for you, if you would keep it in mind as you're reviewing the project, is whether or not you would want story poles or some other visual aids in the course of reviewing the project, particularly to make the project compatibility finding of size, bulk, scale, etc. And one more note for you. There are 3 city landmarks nearby the project. One is the Santa Barbara train station, and then there's that smaller building next to the train station. It's listed as a Railway Express Agency office. I think it might be occupied as a Greyhound bus station now. And then there's the big Morton Bay fig tree. But that's all I have for comments right now. I'm here if you have questions.
All right.
I have a question of staff.
Thank you. Yeah.
Does this go to the Planning Commission?
It will do,
For CDP.
following application completeness.
And what does it do there? What do they do?
They'll review the coastal development permit and the development plan.
Okay. All right. All
Do we
right.
now still have 15 minutes? Or?
Yeah,
No, you've already lost.
You have
I lost
14:45.
Oh, man. All right. Quickly, vicinity map. You know where this is, I'm assuming, but here's the train depot here. Here's our site. Here's the Morton Bay fig tree. Highway 101 right here, State Street here. So flanking this property is a city parking lot. and another parking lot here, which was a
Well, I guess that's your presentation.
you do,
There's a connection somewhere. Mike's all connect down here, I guess.
Testing, 1, 2, testing.
Oh, okay. Interference. We're good now.
You're good?
Yes.
Okay,
Aliens.
here we go. Let's try it again. Area 51. I was just pointing out that there's a parking lot here adjacent to where Enterprise Fish Company used to be. I can't remember what's in there today. And there's a little access road here, you'll see on the site plan, that goes to the train lot depot, or the train depot lot.
It's interference from a wireless mic, is what City TV's saying. So they're catching something.
Yeah.
Pacemaker.
I don't have one. I moved my
Someone's a
cell phone
spy.
out of the way, maybe that was
Steve,
it.
are you undercover?
I'll move my cell phone out of the way, maybe that was doing it. Oh, let's see, zoning code analysis, so egress plans, not too much interested in that. You've seen the site from the historic report. Do we need to go through the site photos for you? No?
Probably pretty straightforward.
Okay. Let's see. Here's the sites. I guess we're just gonna have to let it be. Or they turn me off.
Okay, try it again.
Testing, all right. The site is 17 west, 19 west, and 21 west. There's the existing structures. Ray Road is this little road here that goes, that accesses the train depot lot, and then Montecito Street here. Another site plan, rotated 90 degrees, sorry about that. But here's the existing structures on the property. It's important to note, just for the record, that this site is not allowed to have housing on it. I know this is a hotel project, and there's been scrutiny about that recently, but we're not allowed by right to have residential on this property. All structures will be removed on the site to make way for an underground, partially underground parking area and hotel. Right.
For a second. Let's
Sure. Oh,
find
back
out
on.
how-
You didn't have anything else you wanted to do.
Tech break.
They had lunch yet.
Take no recess.
Okay.
Okay. Calling back to order Historic Landmarks Commission, August 30th, 2023. We'll try this, take two. Take two. All right.
Great, so I left off with talking about the site plan. I'll zoom in on this. So again, the drive aisle to the partially subterranean garage is on this side here. The gray is the building.
Just for
footprint.
orientation, you're on Montecito Street, you
Montecito
pull off
Street's-
of, and then the train station is,
This way,
yeah.
to the left, screen left. These, the white areas, again, are patios for the ground floor units, and then we have planting buffer kind of around the edges here. Parking lot here at the train depot, parking lot here next door. And then we come in off the street here, we're working out elevation changes. We have BFE and DFEs to deal with. So the finished floor of the building is kind of moving around a little bit on us, plus we have groundwater issues. So all those things are having this building kind of do a little bit of up and down, mostly a little bit more up, but we have plenty of height in this area. We're 45 feet.
Hopefully you get that resolved before there are people in the building. And
Yeah, we'd prefer to do that, yes. Control 0, right? Okay. We're also going to be doing some improvement along the sidewalk for pedestrian master plan. We're going to do some bike racks and other things like that, but most of the utilities are all going to stay there. There's a street light post, I think, right here that we're going to be keeping, or right around here. That should be able to survive. This is the lower floor plan, the parking, so this will all be valet and controlled by professionals, well, which is why it's all stacked in there. We're currently going through parking design standards and moving this around as well. We'll come back to you with that at a later date. First floor plan, so the gray areas up front are mostly front of house, hotel lobby, meeting rooms. The blue areas are the rooms, and the different blue areas just signify the different types of rooms. This is the second floor. All the rooms have little balconies that they can go out onto. Third floor, and then we get to the roof level. We're still programming the roof level, but right now what we have is a stair tower on this side that's coming up. We're going to remove this storage area here. The elevator is here. We're going to have mechanical zone and solar and all those things kind of on this side. We feel the predominant views are towards the ocean and the Riviera. This is a second egress stair, which is an open stair. You'll see that in the elevation. So we only have really one stair tower here, and the other one can work its way down. And mansard roof, everything, top of this edge here will be at 42, 48, depending on where we land. On that. And here's some elevations. We have some materials here on the side. This is the Montecito Street entrance or side of the building. Main hotel entrance is more or less in the center. Here's our towers up top. That's our 45-foot height limit here. So as we're playing around with heights and raising the finished floor, we have ways to compress the building. We have our entry to the parking garage here, some planters and plantings up front. The meeting room would open out onto a little planted area. And then this is the corner kind of element at that one room that has a balcony there. And the circulation is actually open, meaning it's not conditioned space because we have a square footage issue on this property. So it'll be covered, but it won't be conditioned. So it's open here and here on the second and third floor. That was Montecito Street. This is the east elevation or the Ray Road elevation. So that faces the old Enterprise parking lot. We have our trash enclosure here, and we have meeting space up front. And then these doors are all set back so that we can have private patios. Here's the exterior stair that comes down here. And then we have an egress stair element coming up from the basement, so that exits here. So that's how we get out of the basement. And then just working on the corners and trying to get some of these rooms to not just face one way, but face two ways. And we'll go, this is the back of the building, south side facing the train station. There's a lot of vegetation that's not shown in this elevation, but between our property and the parking area, there's some significant vegetation and trees back there. But here's the back of it. Here's just a series of rooms facing south. And then the west elevation, this is facing the parking lot and the Morton Bay Fig across it. Again, some openings in the buildings where we have circulation, some bigger rooms up in here. This is the sidewall of the garage entrance, which we're actually going to be shortening a bit. We're thinking about hopefully vining it or doing something like that we can make that kind of large wall go away. We haven't got to landscaping entirely yet. And then these are those planters. So we've raised the planters on the ground floor to help with privacy for the ground floor units. So the thinking is, they'll be up maybe 42 inches or so with plantings in them so that these ground floor rooms don't have, in this particular case, don't have headlights shining in at them with people parking in the lot. I think you guys have taught me how to use this thing finally. Here's some building sections that we've created, just to help explain the building for everybody. But you come down the parking ramp, you have parking down here, and then here's just a stack of rooms that you can see above, and how the roof is actually working here with the mansard, and then some plantings to help buffer that. Again, similar on this side. This is just another portion of the building where the ramp isn't located. Here's the stair coming down from above. It exits onto Ray Road side of the building. I think I finally figured this out. Cross-section at the parking ramp and the elevator and the stair, just showing that circulation, and then how the rooms, how this steps back from the property line. We don't have setbacks on the Ray Road side. And then just a section through the stair area coming down from the roof, parking areas and guest rooms. And that is my presentation.
All right.
I have 7 minutes to
Good.
spare.
Yeah. After the fifth restart.
Yeah.
Okay. If that completes your presentation, we'll go to public comment. Any member of the public in the room wishing to comment on this item? All right, seeing none, let's go to online, or not online, virtual public comment.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine. Turning to virtual, if there's anyone participating on Zoom who would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand and we can call on you. Not seeing any raised hands, and we did not receive any written correspondence, so back to the commission.
All right, to the commission for questions.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Drury.
a couple to start. Are you worried about the water table for your underground garage?
Chair Grumbine and Commissioner Drury, yes, we are.
Okay, yeah.
We're working on it.
Okay.
We've drilled and we know where the water is and we know the slab and.
What it was before anything.
We
it
know,
was
yeah,
swamp.
we have a lot of, yes.
And then I wondered, you mentioned bicycles. You have bicycle storage for people who stay at your motel or hotel and be able to put their bicycles?
Yeah, yes, I didn't mention this, but we have a bike locker in the
Okay.
basement.
And I have lots of other questions on it. I'm sure they'll come. The only other one I have is the west elevation in the wintertime is going to get a lot of direct sun. So I'm wondering if there'd be maybe some awnings, black and white striped awnings or some other colors. I couldn't help it.
I was waiting for that.
Yeah.
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, no, but there is,
Yeah, yeah.
It's going to cook the rooms if there's not some sort of protection.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Drury, most of these rooms here are set back pretty far, which may be helpful. I know when it gets low, it doesn't matter. So even an awning's not going to help us. So we'll study that. And
Okay.
We'll look at the light. I think these windows over here would certainly justify it on the, that are sitting on that edge of the building. But
Thank
yeah,
you.
We'll study that. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr.
Other
Chair.
questions? Yes, Commissioner Jordan.
First of all, thanks for putting up with the technical delays. Appreciate your patience. Talk about the roof deck. What's the programming up there? You're showing a roof deck. Is that going to be accessible and usable?
Accessible and usable for the guests, yes, is the intention. And we're working with the hotel operators and the client to figure out what we want to do up there. But mostly it's a viewing deck and a place to go lounge.
So would there be a bar up there?
No. We can't have any structures on the roof, basically. We've looked at that, but no.
So you can't have a trellis like this up there?
My understanding is we can have architectural elements, we just can't have enclosed habitable conditioned space.
And to
Like a trellis would be okay.
the planner, Mr. Bowman, do you have any other?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, no, Mr. Butler next, but I was looking to the planner, Mr. Bowman, to see if there was any more comment on that structure,
Yeah.
trellis, other.
Thanks for the question. This zone limits the number of stories to 3 stories. That's why the parking needs to be depressed so that it's basement and doesn't count as a story. And also anything
we
on the
can-
roof.
Sorry, if we could, Commissioners, if we could keep split conversations from happening. Yeah.
So the improvements that are on the roof can't constitute a story either. So it can't be, so it's 3 stories now, but like if a bar or something was up there with a storage space for the bar or back a bar or whatever, and it ended up counting as a story, it wouldn't be allowed.
Got it.
That's why Mr. Arell mentioned quickly that the elevator tower, we pointed out in our application review, that a little bit of a storage area up there is not allowed because a tower is considered to not be a story. It's an architectural element if it's only as big as necessary for the elevator or stair that it's providing. But it can't have extra area like that storage area.
But a trellis would be an architectural element.
Yeah, trellis wouldn't count as a story.
That's my understanding as well.
So it's BYOB?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, Commissioner Butler?
I'll stay for comments.
Okay. Other questions?
A question.
Yeah.
There's a front yard setback or front setback? Are there no side or back setbacks? Or what are the setbacks, I guess?
Commissioner Grumbine and Chair McClure, sorry. Let me go to the site plan. So we have a 20-foot, it's hard to see on here. We have a 20-foot setback on the front, and we have no setbacks on the other 3 sides.
Okay, and I'll jump in with a question here, too. I'm trying to understand the elevations in the plan. Can you go to the front elevation? Okay, so where does that, so the tile roof going over the underground, over the driveway there, yeah, that tile roof there, how does that work in plan and elevation? Because I'm looking at the side elevations, I can't quite understand how that's all working.
You have a section to it, don't you? I guess that would explain it.
Yeah, we do have a section. One second.
Should be right there, but it's not showing.
It's not there, yeah. That's a discrepancy we have to fix.
Okay, because then, okay, yeah, because I
see that,
didn't
yep.
see how it goes back. So in looking at your front elevation, that's all on one plane, right? At least the first story is all on one plane. The second story, can you go to the floor plan there?
Sorry.
So it's also fully built out to the
Yeah,
20-foot
I
setback?
think we have some artistic liberties on the elevations that we need
Okay.
to adjust on the floor plans.
Okay.
Thanks for catching.
Was that
Artistic liberties on the.
Well, it could just be painted on the wall, like red tile painted on the wall. so-
No, that's not the intention.
Okay, then.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. So, and then side elevation wise, if we can go to the other,
This one?
yeah, let's see. So that,
That's the Ray Road side?
That's the Ray Road side, yes.
okay,
So we have to pick this up here on the plans.
okay. And then can you go to the other long elevation?
Isn't that the south side, isn't that the railroad side? South side?
That's the parking lot side.
This is the west side, technically southwest, facing the parking lot and the Morton Bay Fig.
Okay. Okay. And then can you, yeah, go to the, yeah. So where, the ramp down one is on the, it being shown on the, actually, sorry, can you go back to the long elevation? So the ramp down is on, so on this one, where's Montecito Street? To the
here.
left, yeah. Okay, so then that wall plane, and then there's it ramps down within it. Got it, okay.
Correct.
That makes sense. Okay. I think that's it for my questions. Commissioner Lendick?
So are all of these indentations or whatever shadow lines on the exterior elevations not there really?
They will be there. We just have to coordinate the floor plan with it.
But currently, the floor plan sort of maxes out the box.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
if there are going to be those pusher poles, they need to be worked in. Okay. And then that goes as well for the buttress that you have shown on the left there, that has a shadow right
This-
there?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's go to, any other questions? Okay, let's go to comments. Oh, sorry, I think we already did public comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did, did we do public comment for the second part? Okay, it's all the microphone fuzzy was, making me, don't know which one we're at now. Okay, so to the commission for comments. So
Mr.
who
Chair?
wants to start? Commissioner Butler and then Commissioner Landvik?
Okay. So, thank you. This is a concept review. So my first impression overall is generally positive. The one item I have concerns about is this whole roof deck approach. We see this coming up a lot. It's sort of out of design. Also, if you can't put anything up there, what's the point of a roof deck? Secondly, it's right next to the freeway, and it's just going to be noisy as heck and exhaust fumes and all of that. So I'm just wondering, and then solar, is there an opportunity to take advantage of that space on the roof as some other utility or benefit to the building, et cetera? So I think that the one concern I would have, generally speaking, is just the use of the roof deck and that practical utility, let alone other options for it.
All right, Commissioner Landvik?
Yeah, thank you. I have been less and less enthralled with roof decks in the EPE, in the historic area and on historic buildings. It's in essence a fourth floor. There are people walking around up there, they're 6 foot tall or whatever. It's another floor. And I have wondered how that other floor meets the EPV standards for a building. And I really don't see how it does, particularly when it's the entire roof. And so I'm not sold on roof decks that are ill-defined as to their actual use at the time of our review and approval. We don't know what's going on up there. I mean, they can be holding dances or whatever, and I just don't know that's part of what we should be accepting as a design standard in EPV. Now, back to the elevations. I find that you go to the other long elevation, yeah. I find that continuous ridge, unbroken as to a change of elevation or height, is not poetic. Is that a good term to use? And I think there needs to be some way that roof thing has some ups and downs. Maybe not a lot, but at least some ups and downs that give it some character as opposed to just being an eyebrow. Because all it is right now is an eyebrow. And we've got to get beyond that. I also think that the tower structure does not need to have a tile roof on it. It can have probably a cornice mold continuous or some other thing, but simply putting another eyebrow on that tower, I don't think is a good design solution. I understand the problems with regard to hotel motel and the exterior elevations, but there's a wish or a desire that there was a little more variety in the windows. As you would look at a classical building, you might find that the upper floor windows are smaller in size. And we should look at how this would look as a classical Mediterranean building and see how we can adapt those openings to being something smaller. If you're saying, well, I got windows all the way across the entire width of the room, well, you got drapery stacked someplace or whatever, and that could be a blank wall just as well as a stack of draperies you see. So I'm looking for a little bit of variety in the window layout. The smaller windows you see on the right side of that western elevation, are they stairwell? They're not. Bathrooms? I mean, if they were a little variety in them, the ground floor and the second floor were that, but the third floor was something a little bit different, that would add to the character of that elevation a lot. There's so much repetition here that it lacks rhythm, or that poetry, as we said before. So I think the roof needs some studies, and I think the exterior elevation, from the standpoint of the breakup of the windows, needs some study as well.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Vice Chair House?
I'm going to echo a lot of Commissioner Lenvick's comments, and granted, this is very conceptual, so don't take my comments too personally. Good. Yeah, I think the roof might benefit by, in the front, the Montecito side being more of a full roof and less mansard, and which would help shield noise from the freeway. And then, that at least keeps you from having just this continuous skinny stretch of roof there, and it kind of consumes the stair tower, or integrates into it. So it's just one element instead of two things up there. If I look at the Montecito Street elevation as is represented on the elevation, I wasn't really warm to those vertical elements. It's just kind of these things bundled together, and I think it probably is more successful as just a big expanse of plaster with an interesting composition of windows. And so we have two things going on. We've got, something going in the direction of an interesting composition of windows on Montecito Street, but then on the sides, it's just very stark, and all the openings are pretty much square instead of rectangular, which I think would be more successful, and there'd be more plaster between those openings. So, I think you could do with a lot less roof deck area, because I just don't think it's going to be that desirable a place to hang out. And you can shift your solar over, so that you could modify the roof in the front. I think that's the main points I wanted to make, but it's just kind of stark right now, and it needs some composition and work on that.
All right. Other, Commissioner Ensberg?
Sure.
Thank you, Chair Grumbine, and thank you very much for this presentation. I guess I have a slightly different take on it, although about the roof, I would put more solar up there and sell it back or something. I don't think that the roof, I think your little patios that you have for each room are where people will hang out. They're very intimate, and I don't think it would be that appealing to go up onto this big expansive area of a roof. So, and I also, on this kind of just generally about roofs, I really like to think about infusion into the community. So, this roof idea that many people are doing, it almost creates like this gated community idea, where you just go up on your own little roof and you're kind of separate. And you're in such a great location here that I think you've got the decks. You don't need the roof deck. You can just, people will flow out into the community and go to all the restaurants and such. And so I would just offer that for consideration. I think the building is very, I think it's appropriate. I think it's well done. I just think it's lacking, and I understand why, because you're not to that point yet, but I think that it could be more, it needs some more playfulness. It needs a little bit more color. Maybe the window color could be a color. I seem like I'm making some headway with regard to striped awnings, so I think I'll start pushing on the color now. But I certainly could see how it could be, and maybe it would get shot down here, but where those insets could be a colored wall, thinking about our Meridian Studios, not that you would do anything that, custom, but that could really be a beautiful effect. And maybe a little bit more, detailing on the wrought iron, just to kind of bring out a little more of the artistic hand. So making it more festive. The awnings, of course, I think more color in the awnings. This seems a little subdued. And then, of course, the tile, too. Really looking at we have so many great examples of amazing tile that you could put in there and do some fun colors. And then the signage, which I always consider as art. So, how that works out for this company that's doing it. But I don't have a problem with I rather like the tile roofs on top of the stair and the elevator shaft. I think it's fine. I just think it needs it needs this next layer, we'll say, of decoration and accessorization. So you've kind of got the basic here, but you need to, in my opinion, that would be all it really needs. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
I think I may have saw Commissioner Jordan, and then we'll go to you. Yeah.
Thank you. A couple of comments. First of all, I would endorse the comments that have been made so far on most points. I will say about roof decks, I think that roof deck would be very heavily used. I think that you look at the El Prado and the way that people are buying bottles down in the bar and then going up to the roof deck to sit there. And I think there's plenty of people in Los Angeles who'll come up and sit over a freeway and think that it's great.
That's all there is there.
But my other comments are, I agree with the comment that it's rather stark right now. I recognize that's where we are in the process, that this is a very preliminary design, and they still have to make the elevations and the plans work out. So next time, what I'm looking for is how that stark plane will be transformed into a wall. What are the thicknesses? Well, how will it be detailed? Well, things like that. I think that the word poetry has been mentioned, or lack of. Another way to get at that is, for me, the repetitive nature of the geometry is too prosaic. It's too dull. It dulls the building down. So I would just make that observation. And so again, it's about endorsing most of the comments that my colleagues have made, except that I do think that the roof deck you would find very, very well used. I'm not a fan of them, but I think that I understand why it's there.
All right, Commissioner Jordan, and then we'll go Commissioner McClure. Or sorry, Commissioner Drury, sorry. Was it Commissioner D?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I have to emphasize, I think it's an important building. It's sort of one of the gateway buildings into Santa Barbara. That being said, I think it doesn't compare particularly favorably yet with La Entrada, which is a big across-the-tracks place that I think was very successfully manipulated by the HLC a few years ago. But
In a
there's
good way, in a good manipulation.
in a good way. Yeah, well, I hope so. You know, like really tough.
At least you recognize it.
Oh, my goodness. Yes, so as I was saying, I understand that in the original, when we first saw this a month ago, I think it was, Mr. Wasaka presented, there was a suggestion, I think it was a very strong suggestion, there's going to be a historic.
In terms of, just in terms of the property, when you first,
Yeah. There was a strong suggestion for the history of both Caesar's Auto Parts and for Mulaney's motorcycle. I think there was going to be an idea of a display within the building, in the lobby.
there was a
about
discussion about it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good idea. Certainly, the buildings are not worth saving as buildings, but the history is pretty, the Wasaka family was extraordinarily influential in Santa Barbara, and I think that they need to be memorialized, especially Caesar the father. Wonderful family. So I would recommend that be at least explored. It doesn't have to be a grand thing, but I think that both Mulaney's motorcycles and Caesar's Auto Parts should be memorialized somehow.
Maybe with like a jump coming out from underneath it.
Yes, but my goodness, we're really frivolous today, aren't we? But I think that I agree with all the comments made so far in terms of your ability as an architect to manipulate the space for shadow and light and make it more inventive. And I would also suggest walking around La Entrada this time in the afternoon and see what the shadows do on the California Hotel across the street and Area C as well. Let me see, there's one more important thing, maybe not. Well, that's it. So I, as far as the roof deck goes, I'll join anybody for a bottle of wine or whiskey up there. So, and you can come along too if you'd like. Yes, I agree. It needs more poetry. It needs more manipulation in terms of light and shadow. Awnings on the south elevation for the summertime, the west elevation in the winter. And I think the idea, somebody suggested, maybe Commissioner Howe's pulling a larger portion of the roof for, what is it called? You know,
Solar?
Solar, thank you. For solar, and I think that, you think that might damp down the highway noise as well? If you No, it wouldn't, okay. Those are my comments, thank you.
All right, Commissioner McClure?
Yeah, I like the regularness of it, and also I wanted to mention, like, the Europeans don't do a lot of big landscape. It's kind of more of an American thing. So I'm not pushing landscape per se, but maybe you could get some palms in on the long elevations to kind of break the regularity up. That's all.
Okay.
Or Chair Grumbine, just adding on to what Commissioner McClure, maybe some kind of a specimen, tree of some sort might be nice at the entry.
One in the front.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's, check.
But maybe if the side planters could fatten it in one place or another to get a couple of fan palms to come up to break the regularity, maybe.
Okay. All right. All right, so I think I'm the last one, so I'll throw in additional comments and then try to summarize. I agree with the fellow commissioners that the areas that I was not hearing agreement on or clarity on was a roof deck. So I'm going to join the side in favor of roof decks, especially if depending on the location. So I would say with an asterisk for this one, because I think it needs to be studied in 3 dimensions as what you're actually going to see from different areas, or not, because you have a big roof deck kind of wrapping around. It might be that some areas are lousy view areas, so don't necessarily, maybe put more solar on there and just use the areas that have the best views and would actually be used well. But I'm not against them, especially if they're not having a lot of clutter up there. So that also is the part of the asterisk, is what do you actually see from the road, from walking along, not having a lot of junk up on buildings and having clutter, even if it's well-kept clutter, still breaking the roof line is a lot more romantic to have a roof tile line to see, as opposed to seeing a bunch of structures up there and random other things. So I think the part that I would add to it as this roof deck conversation, and also just all the conversation, is I think the 3D renderings are going to be really important to study it from the different views and seeing how it fits within the context of other historic buildings or historic trees or the historic tree. So how does it complement that area is going to be really important. And then the only other things to add before I summarize what I've got down here is if on the elevation, if you can go to, any of them. So I think the connector piece, the stairs as connectors, I think that needs to be studied more and get it to feel as if they're, because you really do have 2 main masses, and then with the stair and the walkway connectors in between, and really studying those is going to be important, so it feels like they're not just a building that has a hole in the middle and has these connectors, but whether a roof drops at them and there's a, it's a connector piece bridge kind of feel, or what, however those elements get designed. But I think that because you have these open air walkways that are functionally allowing you to have more building or the building designed well, I think that those elements really need to feel like they're something particular and designed in that way. And they're not there yet. Right now, they're just sort of practically getting you from point A to point B without having been designed. So I think they need to come out as really interesting design elements. And there are some good examples in town of those as well. So looking at those would be great, including and we had a similar project that was doing somewhat similar thing, and we referenced La Arcata as sort of the 2-story over connector that's filled in, even though from day one it was filled in, but sort of like a filled-in breezeway or something. But getting inspired by some really great historic architecture would be good. And then as well, came out in my questions, but also for the comment, having getting the floor plans and the elevations, to jive fully, and then with the note that the elevations are better than the floor plans in terms of having wall plane, wall plane interest and the break in the wall plane. So that's also needs to be done. And then I would say on the story poles thing, and then I'll just make the comment and see if other commissioners agree. I think we first need to see the 3-dimensional side of things, and then the discussion can continue as to whether or not the story pole requirement is recommended to not be enforced. So the default is yes, story poles, unless you prove otherwise via, and the main way, and also in our guidelines for it, or in the cheat sheet for it, is recommended the 3D model. Video has been very helpful in that, there's a SketchUp model or however it gets played out, but helping us to really feel comfortable with, if you don't want story poles, get us very comfortable with what's there and how your building fits in it, and prove that it's not needed. So, and then with that, if there's any other comments before I summarize, Commissioner Jordan?
Mr. Chair, given the immediate environs and the lack of literally neighbors per se, I would endorse your suggestion that you look for convincing ways to persuade us without recourse to story poles.
Okay,
One, Chair Grumbine?
yep.
Maybe I'm forgetting this, but when we had this issue a few times back, for some reason because we were sort of split on it, and we decided that we would decide later. But for some reason, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought that it was required.
So it's required with the exception allowed if, and we even have a eight, I don't know if it's 8.5 by 11 or what, but a document that says if you don't want to have story poles, you need to show the commission through 3D renderings and/or video and/or other means. You need to basically make your case. And if you can.
That's right.
Yeah,
Okay.
You looked at it.
I'm
yeah.
pretty sure I actually helped the notes a couple years back with that as part of the, yeah, the defaulted story polls, but we can make exceptions if we have visual aids that prove to us that it make us, I know we don't use the word comfortable, but basically make us comfortable and prove that we.
But you just used
Yeah.
that word.
Yeah.
Another thing to toss out there is that on one recent project, we said it would be sufficient to just have like 4 points of the building with story poles. So it gives an idea of the height and the mass without doing every ridge and hip and valley and stuff.
Yeah, that's just why we want to be reasonable when we can, with at the same time knowing that the default is story poles. Unless we find there's a reason to make an exception, and that, yeah. And the 3D renderings and other things are ways in which we have successfully done it in the past, and also are part of the list that the city puts out as ways of doing that. Okay, so with that, I'll try to summarize here. First, and I think the other discussion is mass bulk scale, and we're limited right now because we're trying to. It would have to be to make findings, but it seems like everything, all the comments that have made so far, there wasn't a great concern currently as the design is with the mass bulk and scale. But I would say we would want to see the 3D renderings and to see the neighborhood, compatibility before really making those, being able to say that we can make those findings. So I would say that it's discussion to be continued with the current thought of Historic Landmarks Commission is that it looks like it may be appropriate for the mass bulk and scale, but we want to wait until we see the 3D renderings and then also within the context of the site and the adjacent buildings before making the.
Mr. Chair, is it correct that this is the only four-story building?
Three-story.
Three-story building until you get over to State Street?
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Limvick, the Reagan Center is right behind us.
Right. the
That's
Reagan
also
Center.
three,
Yep.
might even be 4, I don't know. It's pretty big. I think it's 4.
So, and as that site analysis will help show its context, I think that's when we'll start have a comfort level. Right now, we don't have it in its context enough to judge. Okay, so
Mr. Chair, if I could interject before you summarize the comments, I did pull up the handout for the visual aids and story poles criteria and confirm that, yes, the design review body can waive story poles if the following criteria is met. This is available on our city website and on the planning page. So the commission can review this if they have more questions about this. And then before you launch into your summary of the comments, just as a point of order, if the rest of the commission can allow the chair to summarize the comments, and at the end, he'll open it up for discussion, just so we're not having a lot of interjections and interruptions during the process of the summary.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so to summarize, so we'll re-summarize that last one. So first, we thank the applicant for their design and all their effort to come to us with this. In general, so far, the commission is feeling that this is appropriate in mass, bulk, and scale, with noting that we will need to be seeing the full context, and will also be requiring 3D renderings and models so that we can fully judge its acceptance within the mass, bulk, and scale and neighborhood compatibility. So that for that to come to continue. We are generally positive and in support of the design as submitted with additional notes and additional areas of design to be continued. So for one, the floor plans and elevations need to be coordinated with our preference being that the breakups in wall plane and roof and wall location per the elevations to be more favorable than as depicted by the floor plan. On the elevations, the unbroken long ridge on the long sides of the elevations are not acceptable and need to be whether broken either vertically up and down or in some other way. Regarding the tower, regarding the elevator tower and stair tower, some commissioners felt that and I would go on that group as well. I didn't mention it, but there's at least split. Some commissioners feeling that the red roof tile was acceptable, and others suggesting a plaster cornice or something simpler. Regarding the openings, and I heard a number of comments, and I agree regarding the openings needing more variety, especially in the long side of the elevations, needing more variety or detail or some other way of giving more interest, with the suggestion of looking at either the upper floor being a different type or other ways of changing the proportions from being less square of the major balcony openings. The connecting walkways between the buildings to be restudied to be designed as connecting elements as opposed to simply walkways between the spaces, and to look at historic precedents throughout the city as reference. Let's see. For the openings, in general, the general comment of adding more color and interest with the suggestion of awnings. I would also have another suggestion for the west elevation, especially of trying to block that light, perhaps some sort of an exterior curtain or something in the Spanish revival language of the courthouse or others, other examples that can block that horizontal light, but some way of adding color and fabric. Another additional note was to include and memorialize the family history and the history of the motorcycle community, and so to be at least the suggestion to do so as per the previous time that the project was before us, as it had been mentioned. Regarding the 3D renderings, so as you come back for 3D renderings and to put it in its context, including views especially views from the main public streets and areas. And the freeway, yep, that's a good point. Study and showing it from the freeway. And as well with context of the surrounding historic structures and tree, and how it relates to them. Regarding the roof deck, there was a division among the commission between seeing it as in positive light or not, and in general, the agreement that not wanting to see clutter up above on the roof deck, and looking at the actual views from the roof deck, what will be seen, and if there is going to be a proposed roof deck, to really have it at the maximized spots and look at other potential uses for that space, including solar or unused roof deck space. Let's see. For landscape, to look at adding palms to break up along the long elevation break up the long expanse of the architecture, and that regularity. And then also specimen tree or trees, trying to include those as well to give some landscape variation. And was there a landscape architect in this? Okay. It looks like a landscape designed by an architect. Okay, good. Okay, any other, and so those are the comments I have captured. Any other additional comments and/or changes to those comments?
Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair House.
I think it would be good early in the comments to say that we recognize that this is a gateway building into Santa Barbara.
Okay, yep,
and
good.
It's important in that respect.
Good point, yeah. If we can add that to the second comment, or put it as the second comment. That this is an important building and gateway, and, yeah, and will have great viewing, even balconies or deck, great viewing of historic resources as well.
Chair Grumbine?
Commissioner Ensberg.
Yes. I had also mentioned about the possibility for color on windows and doors.
Oh, yes, good point.
And
So if we can add that to the comment on color, including windows and doors and awnings and other.
And tile.
and
Oh, and tile as well.
yeah, yes. And I was, I think I'm the only voice here about the long roof. I think it's, and I'll just say this to share, that I think once you get the entire composition all together, if we put palm trees along there, and once you add all this other stuff in, I don't think that long roof is going to be, I think that will be a nice backdrop. If you get too busy with the roof and then you start adding this other stuff in, suddenly it does get kind of cluttered. So I feel like this is, a nice beginning, and that once they add the color, the tile, the palm trees, whatever, just to keep that in mind, that we're not seeing the full picture yet. So I would just like to say that. And then just one other thought I had about, I really
Well,
appreciate.
so let's stick on that for a minute, just so we
Okay.
get clarity in the comments. So at least we can say regarding the roof, some commissioners feel, I think. I do think that, like you're saying, it might, with other things, play out that could be a nice thing, but right now, there aren't all those other things, so.
You could say most commissioners.
Yeah,
you can-
actually, most commissioners,
And-
I think, would be,
Yeah, I think I was the only one,
yeah.
but.
Well, I mean, yeah, well, now.
Oh, you mean, well, we can talk later. But
Well,
not
she-
Brown Act, though.
Yeah, okay. She could still be right if other things were changed, but, yeah, it makes sense. So, okay, let's add that in.
And then I had,
we'll keep going.
and then one last was, I really appreciated the comment about the history of the family, and I just thought, maybe some kind of a weather vane could be kind of a cool idea, where you put it up on the roof and have a little motorcycle-looking
Yeah,
thing. I
that'd be
don't know,
fun.
That could be a fun way of doing that. Just a thought.
And a carburetor.
Nice.
So
okay, well,
those are my additional comments.
Yeah, and, okay, so I think the way to add that is, we said that it was appropriate to include and memorialize the family history and that of the motorcycle heritage from the site, perhaps with item, in an artistic way, such as a weather vane or other details. We'll leave it as a broad artistic thing. All right. Any other comments that we want to add in?
I'll make a motion for an indefinite continuance.
With those comments?
I'll
All
second.
right, and second by Commissioner Drury, he already got it. He's fast.
Squeak draw.
Any other discussion? All vote, all right. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Thank you. I'll take roll call vote. Commissioner Lundvik,
Yes.
Commissioner McClure,
Yes.
Commissioner Dordan,
Yes,
Commissioner Drury,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Vice Chair House,
Yes.
and Chair Grumbine.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Great, thank you, guys.
Thanks for
Thank
your
you for the
patience.
wait, too, the beginning, yeah. All right. All right. Oh, and so I guess we are.
Adjourned.
Oh, wait, do we have to announce that last one? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so now on to item 4, new item, concert review, 1925 State Street. This item has been postponed till September 13th, 2023. All right, and with that, we are adjourned.
All right.